The rain fell in sheets across the New York skyline, blurring the neon lights into streaks of gold and red. FBI Special Agent Elena Carter didn't flinch as a drop rolled down the back of her neck. She had been standing still for nearly 45 minutes, her eyes locked on the museum's glass doors across the street. Patience was her strength. Emotions were not. That was how she had survived a decade in the Bureau, shutting her heart in a steel box and throwing away the key. Tonight, though, she was hunting a man who thrived on unpredictability. Adrian Voss. The name itself had become a headline. A phantom thief with a taste for priceless art and a flair for the dramatic. Interpol wanted him. Billionaires cursed him. The FBI had thrown entire task forces at him, and he danced out of every trap. Elena didn't care about his reputation. She only cared about the chase. The museum lights flickered once. Then again, a signal. She pressed her earpiece. "He's here." Static crackled. "Copy that, Carter. Units are moving in." Elena slipped from the shadows, coat swirling behind her, heels silent on the slick pavement. She had studied Voss's every move, and if the reports were right, he would aim for the Van Gogh in the East Wing. The cameras had been cut, the guards redirected, all his work. But this time, she was ready. Inside the museum, the silence was heavy, broken only by the hum of emergency lights. Her pulse quickened as she moved past marble statues and empty corridors. She told herself it was adrenaline, nothing else. Then she saw him. He stood before the painting, tall and relaxed, as though he owned the place. A man in his early 30s, dark hair falling slightly over his brow, dressed not in black tactical gear, but in a tailored suit. A thief dressed like he'd come straight from an opera house. For a moment, Elena almost forgot to raise her gun. "FBI," she said, her voice sharp. "Step away from the painting." Adrian turned slowly, his lips curving into the faintest smile. "You're not like the others." His voice was low, smooth, almost teasing. "They usually yell. Consider this me being polite before I put you in handcuffs." "Handcuffs," he echoed, tilting his head. "You make it sound tempting." Her jaw tightened. She hated how unshaken he seemed. Criminals usually panicked when cornered. But this man, he looked at her as if she were the one caught. "You think you can charm your way out of this?" she asked. "No," he said simply, stepping closer. "I think you're curious." The distance between them shrank, her gun steady, but her heartbeat not. For the briefest second, she inhaled his cologne, cedar and smoke, before she snapped herself back. Another step, and I shoot. Adrian raised his hands in mock surrender, but that sly smile never left his face. "Tell me, Agent Carter, why do you chase me? Is it duty? Or do you enjoy the game?" She ignored the heat that flushed her skin. "You're under arrest." But then the sound of boots thundered through the hall. Backup, arriving too soon. Adrian glanced at the shadows, closing in, then back at her. "You're better than them," he murmured. "I almost don't want to leave." And just like that, smoke filled the corridor. Elena coughed, vision blurring. By the time the air cleared, the painting was gone. So was he. All that remained was a single white, playing card resting on the marble floor. A queen of hearts. Elena stared at it, fury twisting in her chest. Fury and something else. No criminal had ever slipped through her fingers like that. No criminal had ever looked at her like that. For the first time in her career, Elena Carter wasn't sure if she wanted to catch a man or see him again. Elena Carter hated losing. Yet for the past 72 hours, she had replayed the encounter at the museum in her head like a broken record. The smell of smoke, the card on the floor, his voice. She had told her team he was just another criminal, but the truth scratched at her insides. Adrian Voss wasn't like anyone she'd hunted before. He was deliberate, calculated, and she despised herself for even thinking it. He was charming. At the Bureau's New York field office, her desk was a crime scene of its own. Photos, maps, and printouts scattered across the surface, red lines crisscrossing between locations. Art galleries, auction houses, private collections. Patterns emerged, but never enough. Adrian was clever about staying just one step ahead. And worse, he seemed to know she was following. Her partner, Special Agent Marcus Hale, dropped a coffee beside her. "You look like hell." Appreciate the pep talk, Elena muttered, eyes locked on the map. Marcus leaned against the desk. Carter, I get it. The guy's slippery, but you're treating him like your personal white whale. Don't let this turn into obsession. She wanted to argue, but the word hit too close. Obsession. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A secure message. No sender. Try them at rooftop at midnight. Alone. Hey. Her pulse jumped. Adrian. Marcus peered at her expression. What is it? Nothing, she lied, slipping the phone into her pocket. Just a lead. Midnight found her standing on the roof of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The city sprawled beneath, alive with restless light. And then a shadow moved. Adrian emerged from the darkness as if he belonged to it, hands in his pockets, eyes gleaming. You came. I wasn't sure you would. Elena's gun was in her hand before he finished speaking. Don't flatter yourself. I'm here because you're a criminal. Of course, he said smoothly. And yet here we are, just the two of us. She tightened her grip. Why contact me? Because I wanted to see if you'd come, he replied, stepping closer. Most agents would have called backup, set a trap. But you followed your instincts. Or maybe I'm baiting you, she snapped. Adrian chuckled, low and amused. If you were, you'd have half the bureau hiding behind that skylight. But you didn't tell them, did you? Her silence betrayed her. You want to understand me, he continued softly. And maybe a part of you wants to believe I'm more than a thief. The words scraped against her defenses, but she didn't deny them. Tell me why, she demanded. Why risk everything to steal? Adrian studied her, his expression unreadable. Because some things shouldn't belong to men who lock them away in vaults. Because the system that protects them doesn't protect people like me. Because taking from them feels like justice. His voice had shifted, less playful, more raw. For the first time, Elena saw not just the thief but the man. For one dangerous heartbeat, she lowered her gun. Then, shouts erupted below, Marcus and a team of agents storming the museum. Adrian's smile flickered back, sharp and taunting. Looks like you did bring friends after all. I didn't, Elena said quickly, cursing under her breath. Marcus must have tracked her phone. Adrian gave her a long look, almost disappointed. Another time, Agent Carter, and before she could react, he leapt from the rooftop, a rope swinging him down into the night, vanishing into the blur of city lights. Elena rushed to the edge, heart hammering, eyes scouring the streets below. Nothing, just silence. Marcus burst onto the roof seconds later, panting. You okay? Did you see him? Elena forced her face into a mask. He was here, but he's gone. Marcus swore, kicking the gravel. Damn it, he's playing us. Elena kept her voice even. Not us. Me. Because as much as she hated to admit it, Adrian Voss wasn't just running. He was reaching out, and she had answered. Elena Carter had always believed rules kept her safe. Rules gave order to chaos, clarity to choices. Without them, she would have drowned long ago in the flood of lies and blood the Bureau dealt with every day. But now, every time she closed her eyes, she saw Adrian Voss's smile. And worse, she heard his words. You won't understand me. She told herself it wasn't true. She told herself it was manipulation. Yet part of her, the part she kept buried beneath steel and training, whispered otherwise. 3 weeks later, the break came. An informant tipped them off to a rumored exchange in a shuttered warehouse near the docks. Stolen artifacts. Adrian's calling card. The task force mobilized, but Elena maneuvered herself onto the lead team. By midnight, she was moving through the shadows of rusted steel and salt air, gun drawn, her pulse steady. She found him inside, just as she expected. Alone. No crew, no buyers, no weapons visible. Just Adrian, leaning against a crate, flipping that same Queen of Hearts card through his fingers, as if he had been waiting for her. Elena, he said, her name curling from his lips like smoke. I was starting to wonder when you'd catch up. Drop the act, she snapped. Hands where I can see them. He obliged, raising them with mock innocence. Always so formal. She stepped closer, gun trained on his chest. You think this is a game? Of course it's a game, Adrian said lightly. But not the kind you think. Her eyes narrowed, then enlightened me. Instead of answering, He nodded toward the window where the city lights flickered faintly through grime. You ever wonder why I leave clues for you? Why don't I just disappear forever? Because you're arrogant, she shot back. He chuckled. Maybe. Or maybe it's because I've been looking for someone who can keep up. She ignored the way her stomach tightened. Don't try to make this personal. But it is personal, Adrian said, his voice softening. Every time we meet, you hesitate just long enough for me to escape. Ask yourself why. Elena's finger twitched against the trigger. She should end this now. Drag him in. Earn the victory her record demanded. But then, movement. A sudden creak as part of the ceiling groaned. A beam snapped loose, plunging down toward her. She froze, but Adrian moved first. He lunged, shoving her aside, just as the steel crashed to the floor where she had been standing. Dust and splinters exploded around them, choking the air. Pinned beneath him, Elena stared up at the thief whose face was only inches from hers. His breathing was ragged, but his eyes, dark, intense, locked onto hers as though searching for something hidden inside. For one dizzy second, she forgot the gun in her hand, forgot the mission, forgot everything but the warmth of his weight and the impossible truth. He had just saved her life. Slowly, Adrian pushed himself up, offering a hand. Careful, Agent Carter. Warehouses aren't as safe as they look. She ignored his hand, forcing herself to stand on her own. But her heart was still pounding, not from the danger, but from the way he had looked at her. Why? She demanded, voice low. Why help me? He shrugged, though the edge in his gaze betrayed him. Because letting you die would be unsatisfying. She hated the heat that flushed her cheeks. You expect me to believe that? No, he said simply. I expect you to believe yourself. Before she could retort, sirens wailed outside. Back up. Adrian sighed. Looks like our time is up. He moved toward the back exit, but paused, glancing over his shoulder. Next time, Elena, maybe you'll admit you're not as unbreakable as you pretend. Then he was gone, swallowed by the shadows. Elena lowered her gun, trembling despite herself. For the first time in her career, she had let a suspect slip away, because she didn't want to stop him, and that terrified her more than anything. Elena Carter stared at the reflection in her bathroom mirror, toothbrush idle in her hand. Dark circles clung beneath her eyes. A woman who had built her career on iron discipline was starting to look uncertain. She hated it. She hated how her thoughts strayed when they should have been sharp. She hated how the ghost of Adrian's touch still lingered from that night at the warehouse, when his body shielded hers from falling steel. Most of all, she hated that for the first time, she wasn't sure if she wanted to catch a man or see him again. The next lead came not from intelligence reports, but from Adrian himself. A package arrived at her apartment. Plain brown paper, no return address. Inside, a single card. Another Queen of Hearts. On the back, handwritten coordinates and a time. 8 p.m. Saturday. Don't be late. Every fiber of training screamed trap. Yet when Saturday came, Elena found herself standing outside a dimly lit jazz club tucked in the corner of the city's forgotten streets. The doorman nodded without question. Inside, the air was thick with brass and velvet. At a table near the stage, Adrian sat waiting, wine glass in hand, as though this were a date instead of a rendezvous between hunter and hunted. You look like you belong here, he said when she approached. She glared. You're reckless, sending me this. Reckless, he repeated, smiling faintly. Or confident. Against her better judgment, she sat. The band's slow melody curled around them, masking their voices. You think this is clever? Playing games while the Bureau hunts you. I'm not here for games, Adrian said, his tone shifting. I want to talk, away from shadows and sirens. Something in his expression made her pause. For once, the teasing mask was gone. Talk about what? About why you hesitate, he said quietly. Why do you let me go? Her pulse quickened. You're imagining things. Am I? He leaned closer, eyes catching the low light. Or are you afraid to admit that you seem more than just a criminal when you look at me? She should have stood up. She should have left. Instead, she found herself searching his face. The sharp jawline, the faint scar at his temple, the softness in his gaze that contradicted the headlines. "Tell me," she said finally, voice low, "why do you steal?" For a moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the trumpet's wail. Then Adrian spoke. "When I was 16, my family lost everything. My father trusted men who played the system, and they ruined him. We went from owning a gallery to begging for scraps in months. I learned fast. The world doesn't protect the good. It rewards the ruthless. So I became ruthless." His words weren't an excuse. They were a confession. Elena felt her chest tighten. For years, she had trained herself to see criminals as files, not people. But here he was, flesh and blood, admitting his scars. And she understood. Too well. "You don't have to keep living like this," she said softly. A shadow of a smile touched his lips. "Maybe not. But then I wouldn't see you." The air shifted, heavy with something unsaid. Elena knew the rational choice. She should slip a hand under the table, press the panic button on her watch, and let her team swarm the building. She should end this before it consumes her. Instead, she stayed. The band shifted to a slower tune, and Adrian rose, offering a hand. "Dance with me." Her breath caught. "You're insane." "Undeniably," he agreed, eyes glinting. "But you're here. That must mean something." For a heartbeat, she stared at his hand, torn between loyalty and longing. Then, against every law written in her bones, she placed her hand in his. They moved to the small patch of floor, bodies close, the music pulling them together. Elena tried to keep her mind cold, but when his arm slid gently around her waist, the heat of his touch melted every defense. "You're crossing a line," she whispered. "Then cross it with me," he murmured back. Their faces drifted closer, the world narrowing to breath and heartbeat. And when his lips brushed hers, soft but deliberate, Elena didn't pull away. She let herself feel. For the first time in years, she wasn't just an agent. She was a woman, and that terrified her more than any case ever had. The morning after the jazz club, Elena woke with the taste of guilt sharper than any hangover. She hadn't slept much. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt Adrian's lips against hers, his hand steady at her waist. The memory played on repeat, sweet, forbidden, dangerous. And now, as she sat in the bureau's briefing room, surrounded by her colleagues, she felt like a fraud. "Voss is escalating," her boss, Director Monroe, said, voice clipped. "Interpol believes he's planning a hit on the Van Holt auction next month. But frankly, I'm more concerned about Agent Carter." Elena froze. Monroe's sharp gaze cut across the room to her. "You've been chasing him longer than anyone, and yet he's still free. You're either our best lead or our weakest link." The words landed like a blow. Around the table, agents shifted uncomfortably. Elena forced her expression into stone. "With respect, sir, if I'm the only one who can predict him, then you need me on this." Monroe studied her for a beat longer. "Then prove it. We can't afford hesitation." The word hit too close. Hesitation. Exactly what Adrian had accused her of. That night, a message slipped under her apartment door. No envelope, just paper with hurried handwriting. "Meet me. Midnight. Pier 27. Come alone." Ugh. Every instinct told her it was reckless. Every rule told her it was betrayal. And still, at midnight, she stood on the fog-draped pier, the city a distant hum behind her. Adrian emerged from the shadows, face tense, no smile this time. "You're being watched." Elena's hand went to her holster. "What are you talking about?" "Your partner. Hale. He's not just your partner anymore. He's been assigned to shadow you. They don't trust you." Her stomach dropped. "How do you know that?" "Because," Adrian said, pulling a small drive from his pocket, "the people watching you are the same people watching me." He pressed it into her hand. "This is bigger than art theft. Bigger than me. That drive has proof of a network. Politicians, corporate tycoons, laundering money through the art world. I stumbled onto it years ago, and now they'll do anything to bury me. And anyone near me." Elena stared at the drive, her training screaming trap, but his eyes were unflinching, almost pleading. "Why give this to me?" she asked. "Because you're the only one I trust," Adrian said. "And because, whether you admit it or not, you trust me too." The pier felt suddenly too quiet, the fog pressing in like a secret they weren't supposed to share. "If I take this," Elena said slowly, "I become complicit. If you don't," Adrian countered, "you'll never know if your bureau is hunting justice or protecting the corrupt." She exhaled sharply. "You're asking me to betray everything I swore to uphold." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "No, I'm asking you to see the truth and to trust your heart." The distance between them dissolved. Elena felt the weight of the flash drive in her palm, the heavier weight of his gaze on hers. "Tell me one thing," she whispered. "Why me?" For the first time since she'd met him, Adrian's voice wavered. "Because when you look at me, you don't just see a criminal. You see the man I used to be. And when I look at you, I see the life I'll never deserve but can't stop wanting." The confession unraveled her last line of defense. Before she could think, before she could weigh the consequences, Elena reached for him. Their kiss was fiercer this time, desperate, hungry, like both of them knew it might be the last. His hand cradled her jaw, hers fisted in his jacket. For that fleeting moment, the world outside the fog didn't exist. When they finally broke apart, her voice trembled. "If they find out, they won't," Adrian promised, though his eyes betrayed the doubt. Elena pocketed the drive. "Then we do this together. But if you lie to me, I won't," he said, almost too quickly. But in his silence after, she felt the weight of unspoken truths. For the first time, Adrian Voss had given her a piece of his soul. And for the first time, Elena Carter knew she was walking willingly into betrayal. The Van Old auction glittered like a jewel box of corruption. Chandeliers spilled golden light over the world's elite, their laughter sharp as diamonds. Priceless art hung on the walls, some authentic, some stolen, all feeding the hidden empire Adrian had warned her about. Elena adjusted her gown, the small earpiece hidden beneath her hair. The bureau thought she was undercover to flush Adrian out. What they didn't know was that Adrian was already beside her, disguised in a tailored tuxedo, the perfect gentleman thief among the wealthy predators. "You clean up nicely," she murmured, barely moving her lips. He smirked. "And you make espionage look like temptation." Her heart betrayed her with a flutter, but she forced focus. The flash drive Adrian had given her had revealed names so high up that even Monroe might be compromised. That meant tonight wasn't just about catching Adrian. It was about exposing the rot at the core. "Remember," Elena whispered, "we're here to pull files from the auction house's servers. Nothing flashy. Get in, get out. And here I thought you liked a little drama," Adrian teased, offering his arm as they swept through the crowd like lovers. For a moment, they almost were. The server room was 3 floors down, hidden behind biometric locks and guarded hallways. They moved like shadows, Elena swiping borrowed credentials while Adrian's nimble hands disarmed cameras with a flick of code. Their partnership was seamless, the agent's precision, the thief's creativity. 10 minutes, Adrian said, plugging into the mainframe. Streams of data cascaded across his tablet, evidence of a laundering network. But footsteps echoed down the hall. Elena's pulse spiked. "We got company." "Stall them," Adrian urged. She slipped into the hall, just as Agent Hale rounded the corner, gun raised, eyes cold. "Elena." His voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Step aside. I know he's here." Her stomach twisted. Hale had been her partner for 3 years, loyal, steady. And now his gaze burned with betrayal. "You don't understand," she said. "I understand enough," Hale snapped. "You're compromised. Hand him over, or I'll put you down for treason." Her gun stayed holstered. Her hand trembled. "Please listen." A second later, Adrian's voice called from the server room. "Run." The alarms blared, crimson lights flooding the hall. Adrian burst out with the drive in hand, but Hale fired, the bullet grazing Adrian's shoulder. He staggered, but didn't stop, grabbing Elena's hand as they sprinted for the exit. "Stop them!" Hale shouted into his comms. The chase tore through the auction house, glass shattering, guests screaming, security flooding the floors. Adrian and Elena ducked into a maintenance shaft, breath ragged, their bodies pressed close in the dark. Adrian winced, blood staining his tuxedo. "Guess I owe you a dance after this." Elena's hands pressed the wound, her voice shaking. You're losing blood. Not the first time. Won't be the last. His eyes found hers, intense even in the dim light. But if this ends tonight, I don't regret it. Don't say that. Her voice cracked. You're not allowed to leave me. Not after all this. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing away the fear. Then don't let me. Hold me here, in this moment. Even with sirens closing in, she kissed him, desperate, defiant, sealing a vow in the shadows. When they pulled apart, Adrian pressed the drive into her hand. If I don't make it, promise me you'll finish this. Expose them. You're making it, she whispered fiercely. With me. They pushed forward, bursting out onto the roof. A helicopter's blades thundered overhead, Bureau backup closing in. Hale emerged on the opposite end, gun trained on them. It's over, Hale shouted. Carter, step away from him. Elena raised her weapon, torn in two. Adrian, beside her, bleeding but unbowed. Hale in front of her, the partner who once had her trust. Her choice would define everything. Adrian leaned close, voice a ragged whisper. This is it, Elena. Who do you believe in? The roof hummed with a roar of helicopter blades, searchlights cutting through the night. Hale's gun was steady, his voice hard. Elena, it's over. Step aside. Don't throw your career, your life, away for him. Her hands trembled around her weapon. She had been trained to face down terrorists, murderers, liars. But nothing had prepared her for this. A partner she trusted, a man she loved, and a world that expected her to choose one. Elena, Hale barked, this is treason. Behind her, Adrian's blood dripped onto the rooftop gravel, each drop marking the seconds she hesitated. His voice was quieter, rawer. Don't decide for me. Decide for yourself. The searchlights pinned them in white-hot judgment. And then she moved. Her gun swung, not at Adrian, but at the spotlight above, shattering the bulb with a sharp crack. Darkness swallowed the roof, chaos erupting as security shouted. Run, she hissed, grabbing Adrian's arm. Bullets sprayed the air as Hale fired blind, but Adrian pulled her down behind a vent. They scrambled to the fire escape, slipping into the night as alarms echoed through the city. By the time they reached the alley, Adrian was staggering, the bullet wound slowing him. Elena pressed her shoulder beneath his arm, supporting his weight. You're bleeding too much, she whispered. Good thing you're a trained agent, he rasped, a ghost of a smile curving his lips. They ducked into an abandoned warehouse 2 blocks away. The city's sirens howled in the distance, hunting them. Elena pressed him against a crate, ripping fabric to bind the wound. You're insane, she muttered, her hands slick with his blood. Risking everything for a stupid drive. Adrian caught her wrist, his grip surprisingly firm. Not for the drive. For you. The words stole her breath. Elena, I could have run 100 times. But I didn't. Because somewhere along the way, stealing paintings and dodging bullets stopped mattering. All I wanted was one thing I couldn't steal you. Her chest tightened, torn between fury and longing. You shouldn't say that. It makes this harder. Then let me make it easy, he said, his eyes blazing even through the pain. If someone has to fall tonight, let it be me. You walk away with that evidence. You clear your name. You finish this. No, her voice broke. Not without you. But outside, the pounding of boots grew louder. Hale's voice echoed through a megaphone. Voss. Carter. This is your last chance. Adrian staggered to his feet, pressing the flash drive into her hand again. Elena, you're the only one who can burn them down. If they catch me, I'm a fugitive. If they catch you, you're a traitor. But if you get out... She shook her head fiercely, tears stinging. Stop. Stop saying goodbye. He leaned close, pressing his forehead to hers. Then think of it as a promise. I'll find you, no matter how far, no matter how long. But tonight, you have to run. Before she could stop him, Adrian shoved her behind the crate and stumbled into the open, drawing fire with a mocking laugh. Come and get me, boys. Adrian, she screamed, but her voice was drowned by gunfire. Through the haze of dust and smoke, she saw him weaving, drawing Hale's squad farther from her. Every reckless step was a shield, every smirk a farewell. Elena's fists clenched around the drive. Her heart screamed to chase him. Her duty whispered to flee. And for the first time, she didn't know which voice belonged to her. She slipped out the back as the chaos peaked, sprinting into the night with the evidence clutched to her chest. The city lights blurred through her tears, every streetlight a reminder of what she'd left behind. Somewhere in the sirens and gunfire, Adrienne Voss was falling. Somewhere in her hands, the truth was burning. And somewhere in her heart, a promise echoed. No matter how far, no matter how long. The bureau interrogation room was designed to break people. No windows, no clock, just white walls that pressed in like a coffin. Elena sat at the table, the flash drive burning a hole in her pocket. Across from her, Director Monroe watched her like a hawk, calculating, unreadable. "You've been reckless," Agent Carter, Monroe said. "Consorting with a fugitive, disobeying orders, nearly compromising an entire operation." Elena's voice was flat, her hands folded calmly. "I brought evidence." Monroe arched an eyebrow. "Evidence?" She slid the drive across the table. "Names, accounts, proof of a laundering network that stretches from this auction house to the highest offices in government, including," she locked eyes with him, "people you answer to." The air shifted. For a fraction of a second, Monroe's mask cracked. Then he chuckled softly, shaking his head. "You don't know what you're doing, Elena. Those names are untouchable. That world is above us, above you." Her pulse raced, but she forced steel into her voice. "Then it's time someone reached higher." Monroe leaned forward, his tone dropping. "Think carefully. You release that, and you won't just lose your badge. You'll lose your freedom, maybe your life." Elena met his gaze, unflinching. "I already lost something more." The following night, she uploaded the files. The media storm hit like a detonation. News anchors shouted the names of billionaires, senators, and CEOs tied to the scandal. Protests erupted outside Capitol buildings. An empire that had thrived in the shadows was dragged, screaming, into the light. Inside the bureau, chaos reigned. Some agents rallied behind her. Others called her a traitor. Her badge was stripped, her career scorched. But her conscience, and Adrienne's sacrifice, demanded nothing less. Still, victory tasted hollow, because she didn't know if Adrienne had survived that rooftop. 3 weeks later, Elena sat alone in a quiet cafe on the outskirts of the city, nursing a cold cup of coffee. She had replayed that night 1,000 times. The gunfire, his laugh, his promise. Each time, she told herself he was gone. Each time, her heart refused to believe it. The bell over the door chimed. Her pulse stuttered. A man limped inside, a worn jacket draped over broad shoulders, a scar trailing from his temple down to his cheek. His eyes scanned the room, and when they found hers, the world stopped breathing. Adrienne, alive. Her chair scraped back as she stood, trembling. For a moment, she couldn't move, couldn't speak. And then he was there, close enough to touch, his crooked smile as familiar as it was impossible. "Told you I'd find you," he murmured. The cafe blurred. The city outside faded. She reached for him, hands clutching his jacket, as if he might vanish again. He held her just as fiercely, grounding her in the one truth that had survived the wreckage. They were on the same side now. "Everything's changed," she whispered into his chest. "Good," Adrienne said, pressing a kiss to her hair. "Because so have we." In the end, Adrienne Voss didn't steal another painting. He stole a second chance. And Elena Carter, once an FBI agent, now something freer, fiercer, didn't catch a criminal. She caught her heart. 6 months later, the Amalfi Coast shimmered under the Mediterranean sun, waves glittering like spilled jewels. Tourists crowded the beaches, their laughter rising above the crash of surf. But high on the cliffs, in a villa tucked behind lemon groves, peace lived in stolen breaths. Elena leaned against the balcony railing, the sea breeze tugging at her hair. She sipped coffee slowly, savoring the stillness. For years, her mornings had begun with briefings, checklists, and orders barked in sterile conference rooms. Now, the only sound behind her was the soft clink of Adrienne moving about the kitchen. "Too quiet?" he asked, stepping out with 2 plates balanced in his hands. He looked healthier now, the shadows of his wounds fading, though the scar across his cheek remained, a reminder of the night that nearly ended them. Peaceful, she corrected, setting her cup down. Unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. He grinned, sliding a plate toward her. I'm learning. Eggs toast edible, I think. She laughed, shaking her head. The great Adrian Voss, art thief extraordinaire, can hack into vaults but struggles with scrambled eggs. I told you, he said, mock-offended, my talents were always in acquisition, not creation. He leaned on the railing beside her, his voice softening. Until you. The words silenced her smile, warming her chest in a way she never thought possible again. They still lived in the margins, of course. The Bureau had branded her a traitor, though the public saw her as a whistleblower. Adrian remained a fugitive in half the world, a ghost in the other half. Their faces sometimes flashed on news tickers, whispers of the agent and the thief who had exposed corruption at the highest levels. But here, no one cared. To the villagers in town, they were just an American couple who bought too many lemons and tipped too generously. Do you miss it? Adrian asked one evening as the sun dipped behind the sea. The Bureau, she said. He nodded. She thought of the badge, the sense of purpose, the clear lines of right and wrong. She thought of Hale's betrayal, Monroe's lies, the rot that had poisoned it all. No, she said finally. I miss who I thought I was when I wore it, but not what it became. Adrian's hand found hers. Then maybe we build something better. She tilted her head, curious. Better? A life, he said simply. One where we're not running toward or away. Just being. The simplicity of it was the most radical thing he'd ever stolen. That night, lying tangled in sheets with the ocean breeze drifting through the windows, Elena whispered, "What if they come for us?" Adrian kissed the back of her hand, his voice steady. Then we face it, together. For the first time in her life, Elena realized she wasn't afraid of the shadows anymore. Because the man beside her wasn't just a criminal. He was the proof that even in darkness, love could be the truest rebellion. Months later, an anonymous tip arrived at Interpol headquarters, a detailed dossier on an underground trafficking ring operating in Prague. The intel was precise, flawless, enough to topple the operation overnight. No one ever discovered the source. But in a villa on the Amalfi Cliffs, Elena smiled as Adrian closed his laptop, his eyes gleaming with mischief. Old habits die hard, he said. She kissed him, whispering against his lips. Then let's make new ones. And in the end, the agent and the thief didn't choose law or crime, light or shadow. They chose each other. And that was enough.